Welcome to the Workology Podcast, a podcast for the disruptive workplace leader. Join host Jessica Miller-Merrill, founder of Workology.com, as she sits down and gets to the bottom of trends, tools, and case studies for the business leader, HR, and recruiting professional who is tired of the status quo. Now here's Jessica with this episode of Workology.
Welcome to the Workology Podcast, sponsored by Clear Company. The economic consequences of productivity are approximately $7 trillion. That's $7 trillion in lost productivity. The Gallup report found that 70% of lost productivity can be attributed to managers. One solution from this becomes clear. It's time to transform management and time management for good, which is why we are talking today about how to win at workplace productivity. Today I'm joined by productivity coach Kelly Stalker. Kelly, welcome to the Workology Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Let's talk a little bit about your background.
Sure. So I live in Austin, and I came to Austin through Dell. Dell is kind of the gateway drug to Austin, I think. I worked at Dell for 5 years, and then I transitioned to working at Yelp, which at that time was just a baby startup. It's kind of a leap off a cliff, but it ended up being such an interesting time. I worked there for 6 years, and it was my first time working 100% remote. As you might imagine, at Dell, you're in the office every day, certain hours. You're in a cube, you've got coworkers, you have a lot of accountability. But working remotely is an entirely different beast. So when I was at Yelp, I started getting really interested in not only like remote working, but also productivity for remote workers. And so I began this thing that I called Life Hacks. And so every Friday I'd send an email out with tools that I had found or websites that could help us do our job more efficiently, any kind of technique that would keep people on task and create accountability and just really aid in, our essentially our production of work. So when I left Yelp and started working for myself, I continued to not only use those techniques in my life, but also stayed on the path of discovery around like what kind of techniques or sites were out there to help me do my work more efficiently along with other people. And so in the past couple of months, I've started productivity coaching, which is one of those things that I find really exciting and other people find really maybe annoying or daunting. It's like folks that love to organize closets. I just like to do that digitally. I feel like a lot of people feel very overwhelmed by their digital lives. So I get together with groups at the corporate level or individuals, and we work through some of their digital woes.
Productivity is something that everyone can benefit from, being more productive, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're a leader or you're an individual contributor. So I'm really excited to talk with you today. Can you talk us through some of the biggest barriers to productivity?
Absolutely. I think that the single biggest barrier is distraction. And that's not groundbreaking news. I think everybody knows what it's like to be distracted by the internet, their phone, a Facebook spiral, their kids, their boss, their coworkers, lunchtime, break time. And so there's eliminating distraction is your number one way to increase productivity. But by that, I don't mean like sitting down and kind of gutting it out. I think that we always feel like, well, I say we, not we, but the majority of people feel like if they are a distracted person, or if they're distracted in their work, it's a function of just not having enough willpower to move forward with their day without distraction. And I think that we're actively victims of distracting devices and distracting things. As we know, apps and sites and news feeds, et cetera, are all designed to essentially hack our brains into wanting to go down a spiral or continually be distracted. And so for anybody that feels like they're constantly distracted, it's because people are actively, or sites and apps and technologies actively trying to make you distracted. So go a little bit easier on yourself if you feel like you're a distracted, crazy person all the time.
I use Slack and I have the notifications, so I feel like everybody wants and needs an answer right away because it keeps telling me, hey, I need this thing. There's been one while we've been sitting here talking, hey, Jessica, I need some information. So it's really hard to stay focused.
It is. And whenever I do my coaching, I actively ask people to turn off any notifications that aren't necessary, not a do not disturb. I mean, do not disturb is excellent. And I absolutely think that you should use it. But between our phones and the little fly-ins on our computers, is almost no way to avoid being pinged by people at all times, even if you have an office where you can close the door. So turning off any unnecessary notifications, like, when you go to the news site and the news site's like, hey, can we send you notifications? And you're like, sure, I'd love to be informed. Well, as it turns out, like when you get those notifications, you're likely to click on them. And then, you're off into another world for 30 minutes or an hour. The other thing is that our brains are like actively, because we're strangely like actively addicted to our phones. There are studies that show that even if your phone is off, but it's on the table, like if you're having dinner or you're working, it could be completely turned off, but your brain is so used to pinging it that we will think about our phones, like what's happening on our phone, and it's like we want to be distracted in this way. And so whether it's like flying notifications on your phone or flying notifications on your computer, minimizing those can be super helpful from a distraction standpoint.
All right, I'm taking notes for myself, and it's so funny because just before you said that, I looked straight at my phone here, sitting on the table, just to kind of see what was going on. So,
What's there?
yeah, it's definitely a problem. Well, let's talk about something that you and I talked about before we sat down to do this podcast, and it's the Pomodoro technique. Can you walk us through this and how it might help not only ourselves, but maybe our teams? I'm assuming we're leading teams here to be more productive.
Of course. So I feel like for a long time, and I would imagine like the kind of first 10 years I got into the workforce, it was a badge of honor to put on your resume that you're a multitasker. Like, and I can multitask. And as it turns out, as the pendulum swings, right, everyone loves something and then everyone hates something. Single tasking is the hot thing at the moment. And there's a couple reasons for that. Multitasking essentially can be a brain drain for you. So you're bouncing back and forth between various things. You're getting some stuff done on projects, but you're not necessarily giving it your full attention. Again, talking a little bit about distraction, but it can be very exhausting for your mind. It can also zap your cognitive resources, and it's shown. I mean, who knows, right? Like we're all in the preliminary studies of the brain, but it's also been shown to contribute to decrease like sharpness and early mental decline, which sounds very dramatic. And so focusing on the short term, thinking about doing one task and doing it really well is all fine and well, but who can just do one task a day? Like that's impossible. So the Pomodoro technique addresses that. The Pomodoro technique is named that like very difficult to think of name, because the guy who invented it in the 90s it's a timer-based productivity system essentially, but he used a tomato timer, like a kitchen timer, and it's shaped like a tomato, and he was Italian, so he named it the Pomodoro technique. So essentially the Pomodoro technique is it has like breaks down work into short timed intervals with short breaks. So it trains your brain to focus for short periods, and it can help improve your attention span and your concentration, because your brain craves structure. So you're giving it this kind of structured way to approach your work. And then it understands like, oh, right, I'm going to give my all for this amount of time. And then I'm going to be given a break. I'm going to give my all, given a break, etc. So the kind of ideal time is 25 minutes, then 5 minutes, 25 minutes and 5 minutes. And during that 25 minutes, you are distraction free. You are do not disturb, you are door closed, you are heads down in anything from, clearing out your inbox to moving something forward on a project that you're trying to get done. So you don't necessarily have to complete your entire task in that 25 minutes. You're just holding yourself accountable to 25 minutes and 5 minutes, et cetera. So it's kind of amazing at the end of the day. And like sometimes I forget to do Pomodoro, and I realize that on those days I don't move my projects forward. But when I do use my little timer, it's just a total game changer. And it's pretty easy to do, frankly. I mean, you can either do it with a physical timer if you prefer, like a kitchen timer or something on your phone, or you can install a Mac app, and there's also apps for Windows. And I've got a couple of favorites that I use. One is called Be Focused, and one is called Pomo Done. And Pomo Done actually syncs with your to-do list. And so it'll give you the list of all your to-do items, and then it just checks them off one by one with intervals.
This is awesome. And so we're going to link to some of these tools that you're mentioning here in the resources section of the transcript of the podcast. So don't feel like, oh no, I'm driving or whatever. Like, focus on just your 25 minutes here on the Workology podcast, and we'll get you the resources that you need. Let's take a bit of a reset. This is Jessica Miller-Merrill, and you're listening to the Workology podcast, sponsored by Clear Company. And today we're talking about workplace productivity, because we all need some more of that. Today we are talking with Kelly Stocker. She's a productivity expert, and you can follow Kelly on Twitter at Kelly J. Stocker. That's KELLYJSTOCKER.
We'll get back to the podcast right after this brief message from Clear Company.
This podcast has been sponsored by Clear Company, a complete talent management platform that unifies recruiting, onboarding, performance management, and goal tracking into one award-winning solution. Visit clearcompany.com for product information.
All right. I wanted to get back to the Pomodoro technique. So it sounds like it's easy enough. You can use your phone or one of these apps, but and get it set up. But how do you suggest maybe getting your team to try to adopt something like this? Is there a secret to success, or a way to get maybe team members excited about thinking about this technique and productivity differently?
I think that the way, depending on the size of your company, but a lot of times the company culture feels like, oh, you just want more from me. Like, productivity often is mistakenly kind of either perceived or explained as more. Like, we're, workers on an assembly line. Get out more, make your product faster, like spend all day trying to create more value for the company, or more presentations, or whatever that looks like. And I think that's an inaccurate way to think about productivity. I think the way to think about productivity is getting the stuff done that you have to do in order to do the things that you want to do. And so if you're trying to get your team to adopt anything around productivity or a new tool, approach them with the idea that, like, the reason that we want to do this as a team, and the reason that this is important for us, is because we know that you have lives. We know that you have families you want to get home to, or hobbies, or you want to go out to happy hour, or whatever. And if you increase your productivity during the time that you spend at work, whatever that looks like, either remotely or in office, then you can go do that. And, like, you'll get your product done faster, and that leaves more time for you, because we value that, old work-life balance thing, or work-life harmony, as I prefer to think of it. So the way to get your team to adopt something is to let them know that, like, you're all in this hustle together, and the reason you're doing it is because you respect them and their outside lives as well as their inside lives. So you approach it that way, and then you introduce them to something like the Pomodoro technique, and you say, like, this is something that's worked for me. I mean, it always needs leader adoption, which I think leaders would really benefit from doing something like this. And then just say, like, look, let's try it for a week. Here's a tool that we like. You can install it on your computer. You probably need permission from IT if you're going to install anything, or just get it on your phone, and, like, let's see if this works. And then let's get back together in a week or in a month and figure out, like, does this work for you? Does it not? And if it doesn't, like, is there something else that you're doing that's effective? But feeling like you're all on the same team and you're all moving towards productivity, not necessarily for the company, but for your, like, overall culture and like personal health as a whole, I think is a really effective way to move towards that.
I really, really like this. And we had an earlier podcast interview with Natalie from Microsoft, and they have some really interesting analytics that they're providing, and it's all around productivity. However, not everyone has Outlook 365 on their computer, or maybe they're using it in this specific way. So I do think that the Pomodoro technique sounds like something that could complement some of these other tools, and could be positioned, like you said, as a way to give you a little bit more freedom as an individual to be happier, healthier, and have maybe that harmony that you were talking about.
Well, and considering the long-term effects of creating that structure for your brain, where you're kind of, it's akin to, if you have trouble sleeping, if people have trouble sleeping, the kind of, like, number one recommendation is create a routine around your sleep. right? So you get into bed, you like keep your phone away from your bed, you signal to your brain by like smelling lavender, you put your eye mask on. It's the same with productivity. So you signal to your brain that it's time to work by sitting down, like having your desk arranged the way that you like, starting the timer, and it's like your brain is like, ding, I get it, it's time to work. And frankly, I don't just use this on work. I mean, I use it certainly like when I'm sitting down at my computer, but I also use it to get tasks done around the house. So I turn on this is really nerdy, and I feel like you're getting a weird look into my life, but if I have to like do laundry, or I have to, put something up, or I want to clean a certain room, I set a timer for 25 minutes. And then I know that at the end of this 25 minutes, I get 5-minute break to do what I want, like scroll through Instagram or like sit outside with the dogs or whatever. But it signals to my brain like, all right, I'm going to take 25 minutes, which it feels like a reasonable amount of time. Like 30 minutes for some reason feels like really way too long to like not look at my phone. But 25 minutes, I can totally do it. So 25 minutes, I put away the laundry, 5-minute break to like catch a show, then 25 minutes again.
I love it. I love it. Well, let's talk about other productivity tips specifically focused on email, because I feel like that is the most time-sucking, other than maybe Facebook and social media, the most time-sucking way that I spend my time. I've tried to schedule in the morning, I look at email, and then kind of throughout the day, I will ping through, but then also in the evening, I kind of try to clean things up. What do you recommend for both Outlook and or Gmail users to be more productive and tackle email?
All right, so I've got a couple of things. One is a tool. I love Boomerang. Have you ever used Boomerang before?
I love Boomerang.
You do? Yay, I'm so glad. Okay. So I love Boomerang, and again, it depends on whether IT will let you install this or not. But man, being able to inbox pause is incredible. You can do this for both Gmail and Outlook, certainly. You can schedule messages, which is actually native to Outlook, but I feel like Boomerang makes it really easy. I love being able to get a reminder if I don't get a response. They've got the smart calendar assistant, and you can also schedule recurring messages, which, for folks that are like looking for invoices or story pitches or anything that you have to send more than once, that can be super helpful, just to be like, that's already being sent out at the beginning of the month and you never have to think about it again. I think automating any task, frankly, that you have to do from a recurring perspective is really helpful. So that leads me into templates on Outlook or canned responses on Gmail. Both of those are options within the system, within Gmail or within Outlook, where you can essentially create any kind of template for an email that you have to send over and over again. So if you're a salesperson and you're sending pitches, you can do canned responses with your pitches. Canned responses, by the way, lives at the bottom of your Gmail on the right-hand side, and you can just save any email that you have to send over and over again as a canned response and insert it anytime you want. You can do the same thing with Outlook with templates. And I'm happy I'll give some links so that you guys can figure out how to set that up for yourself, but it's such a time saver, and you don't have to sit there and like go to a Google Doc where you have something saved or try and retype the whole thing again. The other thing is that you can use, there's a plugin called A-Text, A-T-E-X-T, and that is like will work across platforms. So say, for example, you're in fundraising and you do have to write the same thing a lot of times, but it's not necessarily in a Gmail or Outlook. A-Text will fill it in with a text snippet. It's like basically a text expander. So automating anything that you do over and over again can be a really helpful time saver for both email and kind of anything else you do. And then last but not least, I am a firm believer of like, if it's over 3 emails, pick up the phone. And you did this with me because I wasn't responding to your email and you were like, Kelly, I'm calling you on the phone to see if I can see if we can manage the schedule scenario. And it's like, once you're back and forth with 3 emails, just call that person. I don't know why we've become so reluctant to pick up the phone, but I certainly have found it. I mean, I'm in my late 30s. I remember when all we did was talk on the phone, right? But if I call somebody now, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I had to call you. I'm on the road. Why am I apologizing for calling you? It is a much more efficient form of communication. So if you feel like the person is accessible via phone, then just give them a call and you can look at your calendars together, or you can solve this one thing that you can't get through via email.
I love this. So I'm making all these notes. I'm going to be so much more productive, and thank you. Thank you for that. So I am a fan of Boomerang, and I love that for scheduled messages, but I didn't know about the canned responses in Gmail, so I am excited about that. And I think that the scheduled messages is particularly important if, let's say, you need a certain report from team members at a certain time. So it's like have a recurring message, hey, don't forget to send your end of the month report, blah, blah, blah. But I also like this ATEX thing because I'm thinking if you're a recruiter and you're sending multiple messages through LinkedIn and other tools, you can just use that plugin, pop it in, and then share your messages across, because I am working from a Google Doc for a lot of scripts for myself, but I think this is super helpful.
Yeah, because then you don't have to go like open the Google Doc and manage it. I would say also there's a tool that's like a clipboard history tool, and one is a Chrome plugin and one is a Mac plugin called JumpCut, and it saves your past like 25 to 50 copy and pastes, which is like it can be such a game changer. We've all had that moment where I'm like, copy, and then I go copy something else, and I'm like, oh man, I can't believe I just copied that thing and then copied over it. Clipboard will keep all of your past clips, and then you can just go and like find them all in this, huge list of all the things that you've copied. What is funny too is like if you're copying multiple things off one site, you can copy, and then flip to your other site, paste. So that's really great if you're like trying to get verbiage from a site, or you're looking at marketing copy, or whatever, or if you're trying to compare resumes, copy, paste.
I love it. So thank you so much for taking the time. I hope we all feel productive, and really kind of my thought process for this particular episode is that they can get some productivity tips for themselves, like I am here, but then this is something that you can share with your team and your leaders who are interested in maybe driving productivity amongst their teams, not just for more, but for a way to be happier and have more harmony in your life. So thank you. And where can people go to connect with you and learn more about you and what you do?
Sure. I've got my website, kellystocker.com. I've also have a website, productivitypowerhour.com, where people can book me. It's essentially, about an hour and a half of laptops up, install all these things, go through techniques, laptops down. You don't have homework, but you leave there feeling like you're better equipped to do your job, which I feel like we don't all get a lot of like pats on the back, achievement awards, et cetera, as adults. And it feels like, man, if I can just be a little bit better at what I do, I feel so good about my day and myself and my digital life.
Awesome. Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
At Workology, we're making HR learning and recertification simple with Learn, our on-demand learning platform providing 24/7 access to pre-approved HRCI and SHRM courses. Visit workology.com/learn to find out more. And use the discount code PODCAST to save 20% off your membership. Now, back to Jessica.
We all want more time to do the things we want to do with our friends, family, and in our jobs. Productivity is not about always doing more with less. It's about being happier and more effective so that you and your team can enjoy their off time and doing the things that they want to do versus the things that they have to do. I love Kelly's fresh insights into productivity, really for myself as an individual contributor, but also for us as organizational leaders. I think there's a lot to do and a lot to learn about workplace productivity. Thank you for joining the Workology podcast, sponsored by Clear Company. This podcast is for the disruptive leader who's tired of the status quo. This is Jessica Miller Merrill. Until next time, visit workology.com to listen to all our podcast episodes.
Production services for the Workology podcast with Jessica Miller Merrill provided by TotalPicture.com.